Got to Lee's Ferry, still no letter from Blanche. And he writes, "You must be awfully busy that you could not write to your only bunch of garlic." That's how he signed his letters, "Your bunch of garlic." Ed sends his love, and I don't know whether I should or not, but I will anyway. Goodbye from Hubby. They get down to Sub Creek, have some more rowing lessons, and Ellsworth is thrown from the Defiance very late in the day. He reboards it, gets the thing to shore. It's almost dark. He convinces Emery that, "I know what I did wrong. I'm going to go take the Edith through it." Emery says, "Well, okay." And Emery builds a fire while Ellsworth goes up, takes the Edith out in the dusk, flips it over, and goes floating by in the darkness, hollering. Emery boards the Defiance, chases after him, chases him down, and they get a mile or two down before they get to shore, spend a night of shivering recrimination, and hike back up the next day, got the rest of their gear, carried it down. Laid over for a day down at Cave Springs Rapid. Got down to Hant, portaged the Edith around it. They were a little gun shy at this point. But after portaging the Edith, they said, "That's too much damn work." So Emery took the Defiance through, and lower hands, Ellsworth writes, "Emery was thrown out of his boat for an instant when the Edith touched a rock in 25-mile-an-hour current, similar to my first upset in Soap Creek Rapid. The old story, out again, in again, on again, landing in safety at the end of the rapid, not one whit worse for the spill." So they're getting the spirit of it here. That's kind of how we feel about it today, you know. Every once in a while, yeah, we fall out, we turn over, but just get right back in, keep going. A lot easier than portaging. This is down at the foot of Suctolica Rapid, down in the gorge. They got some wonderful photos, in spite of the adversity. They get to the Bright Angel Trail on November 17th, hike out, and find that the reason Blanche hadn't written was she had probably an ectopic pregnancy going and was just about dead. They rush her over to Los Angeles, and she slowly gets well. They do a month over, spend a month getting it back together, return to the river December 18th. Here they go and their supplies. There's the rifle, there's a handbag. But they also got something that they really were glad to get, a replacement for Jimmy Fagan. Bert Lazon was as good as Jimmy was utterly useless. And there's Bert smoking his pipe, waiting for him to run the rapid. Bert didn't go through many rapids. He'd usually walk down along the shore with a rope and get ready to rescue if things went haywire. Here he is right now, getting ready. Here's they colored these things back up at the studio. This one I think they took some liberties with. That's Granite Falls, and I think they just colored in that boat, but I love the shot. There's Emery, got his boatman's visor on. He's really getting the swing of it now. There's Ellsworth in the Defiance. There's the foot of Hermit Rapid. Look at all the snow up there. It's got to be freezing cold. They got down to Waltenberg Rapid on Christmas Eve, and Ellsworth went out first, with Emery following him. He went down the left side, flipped over, the boat just recirculated. Ellsworth nearly drowns, comes floundering out, freezing to death. Emery sees this as he's entering the rapid. He pulls over to the right and pretty much destroys the Edith and about sinks to the bottom. Meanwhile, Bert Lazon down at the bottom, he's not a boatman, but he sees that empty boat coming by, dives in, swims out, gets in it, and rescues the boat and takes it across the river, rescues Ellsworth, gets him back in shape. Emery comes floundering down finally, and Lazon just says, "Young fellow's business is picking up." Within a few minutes, their clothes were frozen, and that was their Christmas. But this is what I was talking about, the construction of the boat. You take a good hit in the side, and the whole side just collapses because those ribs aren't really fastened at the bottom. And it was troubling to replicate a boat when you see the flaw of what you're doing, but you're building a replica, you know. So if I ever hit like that, that's what's going to happen. There's their famous shot of Emery sticking his head out of the boat, and Bert's up there taking the photo. But they put a pretty good patch on it. I mean, to modern sensibilities, you'd think they fiberglassed it. But that's all done with sticks and canvas and tar and nails and pieces of tin. And it held. On they went. This down Bedrock Rapid, Macadamiba, down in the Muav. Beautiful picture of the Muav Gorge. Down toward Havasu, down the lava falls. Any boatman in here, look at that rapid. That does not look like what we see today. It's a blow up of that. It's a solid rock. That tells you two things. A, there's rocks were in different places than they are today. But it was also extremely low water. There are no gauges at this time. And this is one of the great diagnostic photos. They had almost no water at all. They later describe a rapid down at Pumpkin Spring as being a precipitous cataract. The only time I've ever seen that is when they shut the dam off in 1977. Probably 1,000 to 2,000 cubic feet per second. Very low water, and here are these guys learning to row in wooden boats. It's amazing they did as well as they did, really. There's the springs down below Lava Falls. And then this is down in the lower gorge, what's now covered up by Lake Mead. I'm not sure what this is actually. It may be part of what's called a separation rapid, and that was all buried in the late 1930s. And down at the last major rapid called Lava Cliffs, there's Bert and Ellsworth. Emery wrote that he had them pose for this picture, and when they did it, the boat slipped back upstream. They lost about 45 minutes of work, and they're really mad in this picture. They hate Emery. January 18th, they arrived at Needles, California, and took the train home. They survived themselves. This crazy idea. The boats actually survived the trip, both of them. Amazing. They learned how to row. And they profited quite handsomely from this. They did tremendous publicity up at the rim in their little studio. And there's one of the boats. I'm not sure which one that is right now. But as they added onto the studio, they keep moving the boat around and showing their movies. They showed that movie for 60 years. And when Emery finally died, it was the longest running movie in the history of the world. Still is. This is my favorite display. They got that thing just cantilevered out over Grand Canyon. Love that. They had a little card they'd hand out in their competition with the Fred Harvey Company in their wars against the Park Service. Ellsworth wrote a book, went through 27 printings before Emery died, and now Grand Canyon Association has that in print again. It's a wonderful read if you haven't read it. Very matter of fact, very humble by Ellsworth. Great book. Okay, back to me. So we deck it. And now we're putting on the cedar decking over the top of the boat. And that's how it looks with the decks in place. But that's not how it looks now. We had to put canvas over it. And this is a very traditional way. They still do this with sailboats sometimes. You stretch a heavy canvas just like you were making a painting canvas frame. Pull it really tight. You can see where the hatch is. And then you put the hatch combing on top of that. And then you cut it. And fold it up against the inside and tack it on there. And so you've got a pretty watertight seal. Put on the oarlocks. Emery and Ellsworth got these spare oarlocks because they kept breaking there, so they got one that can flip up. I found these on eBay, 25 bucks a pair. Had to do it. And then Gary Perry here, somebody you know in town, helped recreate the old latches. These are all hand wrought. They had copper nailed on the bottom on both sides. And I couldn't really figure that one out either. You know, it's not hard enough to really protect it from a rock, but it will hold in the water and the silt and the rot. And it cost me $113 to do that. And the whole time I'm shaking my head, going, why am I doing that? But it looks cool. And then oak runners along the bottom. And there it is. We had Danny Martinez duplicate some of the welding up front, and got some nice old hempy rope there, and burned in the name, just the same font that Emery invented there on the shore next to Ashley Falls. There's Mr. February in this year's whale calendar. Right now, that's on a lot of walls. It's a Just Pope shot, but very pretty boat. That's not accurate, really. They painted theirs lead gray. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. All right, so the big question on this, how does that boat row? And, you know, is it this great revolution from the Powell boat? Did this just change everything and make it easy from being very difficult? Well, there's one way to find out. You stick it in the water. And so I went on a series of trips to see how this runs. Now this is up in Lodore, Hell's Half Mile, which I mentioned the Kolbs did not run. It was first run about 12 years later after the Kolbs went through in a Galloway boat by a guy named Bert Loper. And this is about the steepest, rockiest drop on the whole Green and Colorado River stretch. And what I'm finding here now is that this boat has got it in its mind, it's going to turn to the left, I'm trying to turn to the right, and it just fights me, it fights me, it fights me. I'm swearing right now, you can't hear it. Oh! I'm going to get swept over the boulder. But we got lucky here, made it far enough right, dropped it in between these boulders, and on down through. And finally, I hadn't even scouted way down there. It's called Hell's Half Mile because it goes on forever, but way down there somewhere I did bump over a rock, but no damage. Pretty fun. This is Cataract. Very tight run. These are all boulders. You gotta drop in between. Will he make it? Woohoo! Big smile right there. And Grand Canyon. If anybody's under 18, don't read my lips here. Granite Falls is one of two rapids in Grand Canyon that ends with the word falls, and they're both incredibly chaotic. You can't really hit them straight. The waves come from everywhere, and so Granite is always one that I dread in these replica boats because it's so hard not to get rolled over sideways. So far, so good. And made it through the worst of it there. Now I've got to get off to the left side of the river, and the boat is going to fight me again. And oh, damn it, there it goes. Spinning out. Very edgy boat. And one last one here, Lava Falls. The last hurrah here. We had highish water, we dropped down the left side in amongst the boulders again. And if this run works, it works great. If it doesn't work, it's usually catastrophic. But got lucky one more time. Almost. Took out a little water there. And made it through. So you can get a Galloway boat down the river, by golly. So, we moved from the Powell to the Galloway. Is it better than the Powell boat? Yeah, it's shorter, it's lighter, it pivots better, but not that great, as you saw me struggling there and cursing. But it does take one boatman instead of three, so that's a definite advantage. Has a smaller cockpit, so it doesn't squawk quite as badly, but it is a tough boat to build. That was quite a project to build it. And it's a tough boat to row. It really puts up a struggle. It's 17 feet long, only 4 feet wide. A whole lot of boat in the water all the time. Has low capacity for passengers, really no capacity for passengers. I think the technique that Galloway, where he turned around and faced his danger, was as big an advance from the Powell boat as the change in the boat. It was still way too narrow for as long as it was. So I don't think it's really a revolutionary boat, it's more evolutionary. But it was a step in the right direction. I don't recommend it. I'll sell it though, if you want to buy a boat. It's not cheap. The next step, we go from the Neville's, or the Galloway boat down to the Neville's. Wider. Julius, the Holmstrom boat, was concurrent with this, same thing. 18 inches shorter, a foot wider, and all of a sudden dramatically better to row. They pivot easy, they're way more stable. This is another big jump in the right direction. The plywood makes it so much easier to build than all that planking and chinking and riveting and so forth. But the cockpits are still very big in these things, so they swamp when you get big load of water over them. And they both have this very low downstream end that goes right under the waves. The waves come right over the top of these things. And it's still too narrow. It's not as wide as the modern boat, so your oars are fairly short. You can't get the leverage to really honk them across a big rapid like Hans Rapid or something. And they just really don't have the passenger capacity yet. But it was good enough to make the Galloway boat extinct from day one. That was it for Galloway boats. And the final step, we moved down to the dory, the Oregon drift boat or Grand Canyon dory. And this is the final huge step. It pivots real well, it's stable like the Neville's and the Holmstrom boat, but you can see this broad sloping side where you can get much longer oars in there and it's much more stable. And you can really move these things around in the big rapids. They began decking them fully, so they didn't swamp so much anymore. You get water in them, but not 150 gallons of water. They're easy to build from plywood. They have that beautiful high prow, which is another real big advance when you're hitting big waves. And they're sexy looking. They are really about the prettiest boat down there.